Chapter 24. The sun's rays just got stronger and stronger. He was wearing a long-sleeved sweatshirt and leather gloves, and his jeans were tucked into his boots, and the only skin on his body exposed to the sun was the back of his neck below his helmet. Even so, as he rode, he could feel the burning sun all over his body. He had no street address for the place he was headed. Wayne's Rock, on the outskirts of Los Alamos, New Mexico, was all he knew. Just before leaving Japan, he'd contacted Amano again and asked him to look up Kenneth Rothman's last known address. Amano said he'd been living in an old house that doubled as his workspace. He had reason to hope that Rothman was still living there, and had cut off contact on purpose for whatever reason. But even if Rothman was gone, the house at least should still be there in some form. It should at least furnish him with new clues. On a desert highway with little traffic, it was possible to make travel time estimates that were exactitude itself. He arrived at Albuquerque right on time, took Interstate 25 northward, and after a time turned onto a state road heading toward Los Alamos. Wayne's Rock should be this side of Los Alamos. He stopped at a gas station not far from his destination. Not to fill up, he had plenty of gas, but to ask directions. Like seemingly all the gas stations on the state road, this one had a little convenience store attached, so at the very least he'd find a clerk. If he passed it up, meanwhile, there was no telling when he'd meet another soul. Since he was here, he topped off the tank, then went into the store to pay. A bearded, middle-aged man glanced a hello at him. Cowdew hadn't even put in a full gallon, so it was a small amount of money that he gave the man. Then he asked how to get to Wayne's Rock. The man pointed northward and said, 3 miles. Got it, thanks. Cowdew turned to leave, but the man stopped him. Have you got business there? The man's eyes were narrowed, and he was frowning at Cowdew. His question was certainly a blunt one, but there didn't seem to be any ill will behind it. Cowdew didn't know quite how to answer, so he kept it short. An old friend of mine lives there, I think. The man's lips twitched as he shrugged his shoulders and said, There's nothing there. Cowdew nodded that he understood and repeated the words, There's nothing there. The man stared at Cowdew wordlessly. But what was he supposed to do? Change his mind just because the guy told him there was nothing in Wayne's Rock? He had to go and see for himself. Cowdew forced a smile and said, Thank you, as he walked out of the store. There was no one else around. Cowdew wondered, as he headed away north, just how many customers beside himself the gas station had seen today. He wanted to check the time as he rode, so he lifted his left hand, the one he wore his watch on, from the handlebars. But he found his leather glove was in the way. He couldn't see the watch. He tried to pull his glove off with his chin, and in the process took his eyes from the road for a split second. When he looked up again, he saw, just beyond a rise covered with desert plants, a line of old trees stretching northward into the desert. Most drivers wouldn't even have noticed them, but Cowdew was paying attention. He was exactly 3 miles past the gas station. He could see what looked like a dirt road running alongside the line of trees. He stopped the bike at the entrance to the road. Up close, he realized that what had looked like trees were wooden poles, spaced dozens of yards apart. Black electrical lines sagged from some of them. Power lines, disused for what looks to be quite some time. If he hadn't been keeping his eyes open, he probably wouldn't have realized there was a road here. It was little more than a slightly leveled-off space next to the power poles. The strip was the only place where cacti didn't grow, raising their gnarled arms skyward, proof that this was indeed a road, or at least had been at one time. Cowdew scanned the northern horizon. wondering if following the power poles down this road would take him to the village of Wayne's Rock. The road disappeared over a hill. Wayne's Rock was invisible from the state road, but Kato had the feeling that distant ruins were calling to him. At least I won't get lost. All I have to do to get back to the state road is follow the power poles, he thought to himself. With that, he grasped the handles, turned left, and sped off toward the middle of the desert. It was the first time since getting to America that he'd taken the bike off-road.